Hello, hello. Galacron here. We shall continue with Hercules. So, moving forward, we have, as a ruler, Pelops was so effective that the land he ruled has ever since been called the Peloponnese. No shocker on that one. The only obstacle to the complete Pelopid domination of the peninsula was Perseus, whom Pelops was unable to overcome. Pelops's efforts at domination were also hampered by the negative consequences of his victory. The charioteer, whom Pelops had thrown off the cliff, had cursed his killer all the way down. The curse stuck, not just to Pelops, but to his entire clan. Pelops's wife, Hippodamia, later hanged herself, and the family line was thereafter distinguished by fratricide, incest, and cannibalism. Lovely. Looks like the curse actually did stick. The last generation wrapped up with Agamemnon, who was king of the Greeks, killed by his wife, but not before he had killed his daughter and Electra, and Orestes, who killed their mother. The star-crossed Pelopids are relevant to the story of Hercules because of a woman called Nicope. Nicope was born to Hippodamia in the years before her mother's suicide, and she married a Perseid from Perseus, Hercules' grandfather, a son of Andromeda, and Perseus called Sthenelus. This marriage was one of a number of dynastic matches which took place when Perseids and Pelopids made love not war, and transferred their rivalry to the marriage bed. Well, I suppose that's not a bad thing. Sthenelus, as might be expected of a prince of the Perseid line and ruler of a Mycenaean kingdom, had a busy and complex life. During his rule, he drove into exile a man called Amphitryon, who was a warrior, who had killed Sthenelus' brother and was engaged to marry his niece, the fair Alcmene, who is Hercules' mother. Sthenelus did not know it, but by this action he set in motion a chain of events which was to transfer rivalry for the Mycenaean kingdoms from the Peloponnese to the heavens, and from the families of Perseus and Pelops to the family of the Olympian gods. So, we move on to the birth of Hercules. And of Eurystheus, I guess, is going to be covered within. Here's the stitch from Hesiod. This is Hesiod the Shield, which I heard wasn't that exciting, but irregardless. Alcmene was a superlative among women in form and beauty. None born of mortal woman in the bed of a mortal man could compete with her in intellect, while her face and her dark eyes were as persuasive as the face and eyes of Aphrodite. So apparently, she was hot and smart, based on what Hesiod's saying. So, the poet describes the granddaughter of Perseus, the betrothed of Amphitryon, and niece of Sthenelus. Given these attributes, it is a little wonder that Amphitryon, the mighty spear-wielding warrior, was putty in his fiancée's hands. The love-struck swain was readily persuaded to make war on the people of Taphos. Alcmene had a justified grudge against that people, for they had slain her brothers. The Taphanes dwelt in northwestern Greece, and the war was long and complex enough to merit an epic of its own. That would be kind of cool to read, but regardless. Which it got, though there is no space here for the stirring tale of battle, lust, and treachery, which kept Amphitryon from the arms of his beloved. So, suffice it to say that Amphitryon emerged triumphant from his war and rushed home to celebrate his victory with the beautiful Alcmene. Now, being a beautiful princess in the world of heroic Greece had its hazards, and chief of these hazards was Zeus, king of the gods, god of thunder, lightning, order, and many other things. Danae, the mother of Perseus and great-grandmother of Alcmene, had already discovered that being securely locked in a tower was no protection for the perpetually oversexed king of the gods. Zeus was married to his sister Hera. That is actually true, by the way. True to myth. And so had few inhibitions about incest with his own descendants. Indeed, he is one of the few beings outside the genus Canaculus who has managed to become his own great-uncle. Talk about strange. So, Alcmene, so the poet Hesiod tells us, was so devoted to her Amphitryon that she would look at no other man, nor indeed at any god, even Zeus himself. Zeus was well aware of this, and so began his seduction of Alcmene by turning himself into the form of Amphitryon. Yes, Zeus could just easily shapeshift and look exactly like Amphitryon, his voice sounding like him, you name it, it's perfect shapeshifting. In this disguise, he appeared as the beloved Alcmene. In this disguise, he appeared as the beloved of Alcmene. Sorry about that. Home early from the wars and brandishing a Taphian cup as proof of his success. And here we have a stitch. What has been done there at the army, Zeus is now relating to Alcmene. She, who actually is with a lover, thinks she is with her own husband. Zeus, now relating how he routed the enemy host and took a fortune in booty. Booty is a word for money or treasure. That loot taken by Amphitryon has now been looted from him. What he wants, Zeus easily gets. So, that's the end of the stitch. The night which followed was indeed the stuff of myth, for it consisted of multiple bouts of vigorous sex, interspersed by long anecdotes in which Zeus, in the form of Amphitryon, recounted the doings of his alter ego in the wars. If it seemed to Alcmene that the night of lovemaking and storytelling seemed to last as long as 3 normal nights, well, that's because it did. Zeus was having far too good a time to pack it in with the dawn, so he used his pejorative as king of the gods to extend the night until he, and presumably Alcmene, were well and truly sated. So yeah, he talked to other gods with mental telepathy and said, "Oh, make the night last 3 days in a row, and then morning will come." And they did. So, this unnaturally long night of epic sex had an unexpected side effect. Not only was Alcmene made pregnant, but the same egg was fertilized repeatedly by the seed of Zeus. More divine essence and strength was transferred to the newly conceived child with each iteration. I didn't really know that one. The same egg fertilized over and over, repeatedly by Zeus, to make Hercules simply more powerful. Not just than mortal man, than shall I say, a superhuman being. More powerful than that, even. Again, the fates told Zeus that the grandson of Perseus was going to be special, so Zeus was in it to make this child more and more special, extra special. And so he did. So, more divine essence and strength was transferred to the newly conceived child with each iteration, and Zeus realized that the result would become someone exceptional, even by the standards of his own remarkable offspring. So even Zeus is saying, this child Heracles will be even better than other children of mine. And Zeus had a lot of kids. I mean, he had Ares, Hephaestus, and Hermes, Perseus. Yet the reproductive process was not yet done with Alcmene. The very next day, Amphitryon came home from the wars and swept his beloved into bed without further ado. The truth came out afterwards, possibly when Alcmene commented either on her partner's different technique or enduring stamina. How about that? Interesting. By then it was too late. The son of Zeus now shared Alcmene's womb with a son of Amphitryon, in a process known to modern gynecology as heteroparental superfecundation. Even now, all might have been well, but Zeus was so excited by the potential of the son he had just fathered that he failed to keep his mouth shut. When the birth was due, Zeus announced that the descendant of Perseus born that day would finally put the rivalry of the Peloponnesians and Perseids aside and become the ruler of Mycenae and the Peloponnese. Zeus, you might be causing yourself a problem here by declaring all of this. Enter Hera, the queen of the gods, who's married to Zeus and their brother and sister. Queen of the gods, wife of Zeus, and the future bane of Hercules' entire existence. Well, almost all of it. At least his mortal existence. Hera knew of and bitterly resented her husband's numerous infidelities. However, Zeus was the king of the gods. He was also Hera's husband and sister, and he was therefore gender discrimination in this era, being as malignantly alive and well among gods as it was with men. Hera's lord and master. Zeus was beyond punishment, so, as one Roman writer explained, if you can't beat the donkey, you can hit the saddle. Interesting. The frustrated Hera took out her venom at her husband's affairs on his paramours. However, unwilling they had been, and punished their children, no matter how innocent. So Hera was like, well, I can't punish Zeus, but I can punish Hercules. This was a situation that would have been familiar to every ancient Greek and Roman who heard the story. As the later Roman writer Seneca says, to take a mistress is a grave offense to a wife. Everyone knew the injustice of punishing a slave girl for being raped by her master, but everyone knew it happened. To the Greeks and Romans, the tragedy of Hera's victims was real life writ large, with princesses suffering in the same way as slaves. Through no fault of their own, Alcmene and her unborn son had become the subject of the deadly vindictiveness of a powerful deity, Hera, queen of the gods. Innocence neither excused them nor mitigated the punishment. Hercules and his mother were victims of circumstance. You can say that again. And when the Greeks and Romans followed the stories of Hercules' life, they did so mainly to see how he coped with those circumstances. Well, sometimes not well. Who would? It was the Greco-Roman view of the world that no man was responsible for the hand that life dealt him, but the manner in which he played that hand gave the measure of the man. Sometimes people even follow this to this day, this edict. Hera had decided that there was no way that Zeus's bastard son was going to become king of Mycenae and the Peloponnese, which Hercules was going to be entitled to be king. Since Zeus had already pronounced that the descendant of Perseus born that day would be king, this would happen. This would happen because Zeus was a Greek god, and Greek gods had integrity. In the modern world, integrity is a good thing. A person says that he thinks and does what he says. There is no disparity between his thoughts, words, and actions. They are integral, which is what the word integrity means. While integrity may be wonderful in a human being, when you are an all-powerful God, integrity is something of a curse. You have only to think a thing, and thanks to your divine power, it is done. Zeus, king of the gods, can alter reality to his whim. That's true in Greek myth. So, and irreversibly done, because being a god not only means never having to say you're sorry, it also means not being able to undo your actions. When you think about it, the universe would rapidly become a mess if the gods started second-guessing themselves. Integrity and the inability to go back and correct missteps do much to explain the notoriously poor impulse control of the Olympian gods in Greek myth. So, in the case of Hercules, integrity meant that once Zeus had declared that the descendant of Perseus, born that day, would be king, the matter was set in stone. It would happen no matter what. This left Hera with just 2 cards to play. It would happen no matter what. But one was the goddess out of the gods. This left Hera with just 2 cards to play. One was the goddess Eileithyia, who, by some accounts, was Hera's daughter. The other card was that Zeus had not specified which descendant of Perseus would be king. Okay? This is key. It will be recalled that the Pelopid Nicope had married a son of Perseus, and it so happened that at this time Nicope was also pregnant, though only in her 7th month. This is where the goddess Eileithyia came in. For Eileithyia, it's hard for me to say that one, was the goddess of childbirth. It was up to Eileithyia whether a birth was quick and easy or prolonged and painful. She was Hera's daughter, who holds power over the bitter pangs of childbirth, as the poet Homer puts it. Once Hera had given her orders, it was the work of moments for Eileithyia to put the birth of Alcmene's child on hold, leaving the mother racked by the pains of a fruitless labor. While Alcmene suffered, Elatheus sped to Mycenae and there induced Nicope into a speedy and productive birth. For all that child was 2 months premature. Thus was born Eurystheus, son of Nicope and Sthenelus, grandson of Perseus and Andromeda, and king of Mycenae by birth and the word of Zeus. So, basically what it's saying is Hercules got screwed out of being king because of Queen Hera of the gods. And she told her daughter, hey, you're going to have to change this. You're going to have to slow down the birth of Hercules and speed up the god of Eurystheus because of what King Zeus has declared. So she did it, and King Eurystheus got to be king. Hercules did not. He would have been, but Queen Hera interfered. So, the other grandson, the son of Zeus, remained locked within the tortured womb of Alcmene and could stay there forever as far as Hera and Eilithyia were concerned. Seems kind of cruel to me. For 7 days, Alcmene sweated it out. She might have suffered longer were it not for her nurse. This nurse was Galinthias, a childhood friend of Alcmene and herself of semi-divine origin. That's advantageous and handy. Thanks to her supernatural origins, Galinthias was able to note the furtive presence of Eilithyia at the bedside and quickly observed that the goddess was there to hinder rather than help. Another advantage of being semi-divine was that Galinthias was able to directly contact those mystic beings whom no mortal could approach. Leaving the bedside of her friend, Galinthias hurried through secret ways to the cave where the fates span into the huge tapestry of life, the threads which describe the destiny of every living being. As expected, Galinthias found Clotho, the spinner, holding tight to the thread which waited to weave Alcmene's unborn son into the web of the world. Loudly, the nurse proclaimed that through the will of Zeus, a child had been born to Alcmene. So startled was Clotho by the announcement that she relaxed her grip on the thread. This immediately sprang into the web, irrevocably becoming part of the tapestry of life. Eilithyia had been sidestepped, and the child had been born, albeit a week too late to claim his inheritance of kingship. The deception of Galinthias brought not one child into the world, but 2. It will be remembered that Amphitryon had slept with Alcmene when he returned from the wars the day after Zeus had slept with Alcmene while pretending to be Amphitryon, shapeshifted, returned from the wars. Both sessions had been fruitful, so Amphitryon became the proud father of his own son, Iphicles, at the same time as he became the unwilling stepfather of Zeus's offspring, Heracles. Incidentally, so traumatized was Amphitryon by the whole business that he never slept with Alcmene again, nor is this the only manner in which Alcmene became something of a terminus stop in sexual relations. Zeus therefore never again slept with another mortal woman, claiming, rather ambiguously, that he had outdone himself with Alcmene. That's interesting. especially Zeus, king of the gods, how proud and pridefully, he is. Hera had succeeded in her intent, for the descendant of Perseus born on the day of Zeus's rash announcement was Eurystheus, who became king, son of Nicope. Eurystheus thus became the future king of Mycenae, usurping the son of Zeus from his predestined role. Speaking of Heracles, Heracles was supposed to be king. Instead, Eurystheus is king. Nevertheless, Hera was by no means done with the child of her husband's adulterous union. To signal her continued malice, she brutally punished the nurse Galantheus for having allowed the child to be born at all. So Hera was, still at it. She was not content with just this alone. Just him being born. Queen Hera was like, how about now? But it was too late. Galantheus was turned into a polecat, a creature ill-famed in antiquity for its incontinence and bizarre reproductive habits. How lovely. Actually, this revenge was something of a flop, because the witch goddess Hecate had a soft spot for the underdog, or under god, and she adopted the weasel nurse into her retinue. This led to the creature being rehabilitated in the classical world, where many households adopted a pet weasel in Hecate's honor. Talk about strange. As for the child himself, now that he had made his way into the world despite Hera's best efforts, the queen of the gods decided to get the brat out again. And as speedily as his arrival had been tardy, Galantheus' successor as nurse takes up the tale for an amazed Amphitryon. Here we have a stitch. Now shall I make you privy to matters even more wonderful. After the boy was laid in the cradle, 2 immense crested serpents glided down through the skylight, snakes. Instantly they both reared their heads and began to gaze all around. After they had located the children, they immediately headed for the cradle. I was afraid for the children and terrified for myself. I backed off, pulling the cradle and rocking it back and forth. But this just made the snakes pursue all the more fiercely. Then one of the children caught sight of the serpents, and lunging from the cradle, he suddenly attacked them, grasping one in each hand. Guess which one it was? Heracles or Iphicles. That a babe, only a few days old, could use large serpents as cradle toys, irreparably crushing them in the process dead, meant that his ancestry could hardly be disguised for long. Therefore, futile as it might be, the attempt had to be made to appease Hera, and both gods and men gave it a go. Alcmene had named the infant Alcides. Okay, that was Hercules' first name, not Heracles. It was Alcides, a combination word formed from Alcestis, the father of Amphitryon and Tiryns, the town where he was born. That latter town remains today, its walls still standing, though considerably battered by the passage of 31 centuries. Now, Alcmene changed that name to Heracles. This, the Greek form of Hercules. Hercules is Roman, meaning Heracles means, Heracles means glory to Hera. Hercules means glory of the lady. So there's a difference. And that's why he wanted to go by Hercules even in godhood, because of what Hera had done to him throughout his mortal life, and we're going to get to exactly that. So, Hera means lady, being the feminine form of the word hero. However, the bastard child of her husband's extramarital affairs did not make the goddess feel very glorified. No shocker on that one. So, in fact, the name drew attention to her humiliation and succeeded only in making Hera all the more furious. Alcmene's ham-fisted attempt at flattery had backfired, but the attempt of the gods did not do much better. By some accounts, the plan was devised by Athena, which shows that even the goddess of wisdom can have her off days. The idea that Hermes would smuggle the child into the heavens and lay the babe at the side of the sleeping Hera would awaken to find that she was feeding a suckling child, which was Heracles as a baby. And hopefully the experience would awaken her maternal instincts, making her more benevolent toward the child. And even if Hera's instincts failed to kick in, the child might at least get a mouthful of Hera's milk. This milk, combined with the child's divine ancestry, Zeus, would further contribute towards making Hercules a demigod, which it did. So again, this gets into why Heracles was so strong, his endurance so high, his hyper reflexes, his invulnerability or toughness. This is getting into it, not just the, son of Zeus. Now he's being breastfed by Queen Hera, the queen of the gods. Okay? Sure enough, when Hera awakened, she was considerably confused at finding a foundling baby at her breast. From sympathy with the child's evident hunger, she allowed him to keep feeding. That is, until the strength and vigor with which the baby extracted her milk caused Hera to figure out whose child was doing the extracting. So apparently Hera knew. With this realization, Hera wrenched the child away so violently that her milk jetted away across the skies. That milk remains in the heavens today, the Via Lactea. The Romans called it the Milky Way, our galaxy. The stars as well. In Greek, this is the circle of milk. Galaxias Kyklos, the galaxy. That's how potent Queen Hera's breast milk is. So, that covers that. So again, basically, we can ascertain by this why Hercules, was so powerful and so strong, especially strength and endurance, his resistance to injury, which was outstanding. He was a mere mortal for a time. But again, it's like, well, how could a mere mortal be this physically strong and have this endurance? Okay? So, we have Zeus fertilizing Alcmene's egg 3 times, just to make extra sure about this being a very special individual. Okay? We have that. And Zeus is king of the gods. Okay? And Alcmene is a mere mortal woman. So we have that going for Heracles as is. Then, first it said Hermes, but another version says that Alcmene placed Heracles as a baby in the middle of the forest so that Queen Hera could not kill the baby Heracles. And then Athena came down, the goddess of wisdom, and that's Heracles' half-sister, brought baby Heracles to Mount Olympus and said, hey, and she liked messing with her stepmom, Queen Hera, and said, hey, Hera, I found this babe out, this newborn babe, this young baby out in the middle of the forest on Earth, which, sees how you're breastfeeding anyway, could you just go ahead and nourish this baby for a little bit? And Hera, not knowing, it was Heracles who she hated most, and she did it. And the same results. Heracles was breastfed a certain amount by Queen Hera, okay, and she shoved him off, and some, breast milk sprayed out and formed the Milky Way, the galaxy. So then Hera said, okay, sorry if you're upset, took Heracles, and Athena went back down to Earth and gave baby Heracles back to Alcmene, and then Athena, the goddess of wisdom, and also Hercules' half-sister, teleported out and left. So, this is the build-up here on why. Why would Hercules be so strong as to hold up the vault in place of Atlas for 3 hours? Okay? A mere mortal should not be strong enough to hold up the vault, hold up the heavens for 3 hours. And Hercules did it. Okay? This is how strong we're talking about. And the endurance even, to do it for 3 hours. Because Atlas was the one who was cursed by Zeus to do it, to hold up the heavens while standing, hold up Uranus, which is the heavens, the sky, while standing on Gaia, the earth. And Zeus said, you're going to do this forever, so they cannot have more scummy children like you. Which Atlas was a Titan who is a child of Uranus and Gaia. So he's holding them separate. So this evidence is conclusive as to why Hercules was so strong as a mere mortal. Later he was a god, I know, but as a mere mortal he held up the vault, the celestial vault, the firmament, for 3 hours in place of Atlas. So, basically that is the reason. You have Zeus being, the most powerful, and he's the king of the gods, and he triple fertilizes Alcmene's egg, just to be sure. And then as Heracles as an infant is breastfed by Queen Hera, queen of the gods. Now, it wasn't breastfed for 3 months or anything, all right? Not that long, but there was a certain amount of breastfeeding by Heracles by Queen Hera, okay? So, by doing that, this multiplied Hercules' physical strength by 100 million. And this would be the reason. Don't get me wrong, Hercules did a lot of great things, the monsters he killed, and it's endless. Okay, there's just a lot of different things that Hercules did with his strength, his skill, and all that. But in terms of raw physical strength, it might be the case that holding up the vault, okay, for Atlas, by himself, Hercules held up the vault, the heavens, for 3 hours. The strength and endurance to do this. This is the reason he was able to do it, to have the strength to do it. Was his dad was King Zeus. King Zeus triple fertilized the egg of Alcmene, to be sure. And then baby Heracles was breastfed by Queen Hera. Hera, queen of the gods. So, if anyone was wondering why Hercules came out a mere mortal, so physically strong, and his endurance being way too high to hold up the firmament, to hold up the heavens for 3 hours. So you have strength and endurance are at play to hold up the vault, to hold up the heavens, this would be the best reasons that I can think of, you know, as to why Hercules would be this strong, have this much endurance, resistance to injury. Because if you take a look at Perseus, who was a terrific hero, you know, a great sword fighter, he had courage, but he was nowhere near, not even close, super strength for a mere mortal. And he was the son of Zeus. Okay, so Hercules is a very unique individual in terms of pregnancy, in terms of breastfeeding, and then when he came to be a full adult, like entering adulthood, 18, 19, 20 years of age, that's it. The reason why, as an adult, he was so strong that Hercules was the strongest ever. In Greek mythology, Hercules was stronger than his father Zeus. Zeus could punch Earth and destroy it with one punch. That's how strong Zeus is. Hercules, the son of Zeus, is physically stronger than his dad Zeus. He couldn't defeat Zeus because Zeus has so much more than just physical strength. He has his thunderbolts, he has the power of weather control, he can warp reality and change reality to his whim. So I'm not saying Hercules could beat his own dad, Zeus. He would lose, and lose royally. But what I am saying is Hercules was, in fact, physically stronger than his daddy, Zeus. So anyways, that's going to do it. Thank you for watching. This is Galacron signing out, and I'll be back with another one, continuing the info and data that we have on the mighty Hercules in Greek mythology. So, thank you, and Galacron out.